Delighted to be joined by the former Tory leader, Duncan Smith. Very good to see you. I mean, I don't know if you heard my conversation with Nigel Dodds, but I took from that there is literally no chance that she wins her vote on Tuesday. Do you agree with that?
Well, I do, yeah, in principle, because it's quite clear that the numbers don't stack up. They don't stack up.
And you're going to vote against, aren't you?
Well, I can see nothing here that persuades me that we've reached an agreement that will deliver a trade deal. And the biggest issue, which is not often touched on, the problem with the backstop, which people don't reflect on, is if we have this backstop which locks us in, then all they have to do is sit and wait as we get closer to the backstop. As President Macron said before he had full riots, he said that we're going to wait till you get near the backstop. Then you're going to be so desperate to get out of the backstop, we're going to get the fishing off you, and then all of a sudden, we're desperate. And the point is, it's the worst negotiating position to be in, which is to have yourself trapped against an eventuality which then locks you in.
But I just need to be absolutely clear about this. I mean, David Gauke, Justice Secretary, just said there is no chance of this deal being changed in any way at all before Tuesday. So on that basis, you will vote against.
Yeah, if it's as it is now, no change, I'm definitely voting against.
And this idea that the whips are floating, that they would give MPs a vote before a backstop was implemented, does that persuade you at all?
Well, no, because, again, once you sign an international treaty, which is what the withdrawal agreement is, you are bound by it, and it supersedes anything that Parliament does. You can't arbitrarily then say, Parliament said, we won't go in. If the treaty says the next place you go is into the backstop, which it does, then Parliament's say will be struck down by the courts. Much like many of the things that have been done when they contravened European laws, they were struck down by the judges. And so that's exactly what would happen. In other words, it doesn't mean anything. It's a tokenistic concept.
Now, you were leader of the Conservative and Unionist Party. When you saw Geoffrey Cox, the Attorney General's view that Great Britain would, to all intents and purposes, when it comes to regulation, be a third country in respect of its deals with Northern Ireland. How did you feel?
Well, I have to say this attorney's advice is devastating. I didn't think it could be stronger than his testimony, but in fact it is stronger than his testimony.
So you understand why the government didn't want to release it?
Completely, I can see that now. And he pulled no punches in it. He's basically told the government, although he hasn't actually said it, he said this deal is not a good deal because...
So why do you think he's now standing up and supporting her?
Because he has taken a wider political view that as Attorney General he has to support the government, quite rightly too, because he is the government's advisor. He's given them their advice.
But some cabinet ministers have resigned. Are you not disappointed that he also hasn't resigned, having come to this conclusion?
I mean, I have a lot of time for Geoffrey. You know, he's a highly talented lawyer, and he's given them their advice. Like all lawyer-client relationship, you give the advice. If they don't want to take the advice, that's their decision. And he pretty much says to them, this doesn't work. But, by the way, I want to come back to something, if it's all right, on David Gauke said earlier.
Yeah.
Of course they're going to say there's nothing on offer. And, of course, the European Union is going to say nothing on offer. But I don't believe that. I believe that if this vote is lost on Tuesday, then the first thing the government has to do is go straight back to the EU and sit down and say, look, it doesn't really matter what you want or we want, this doesn't pass Parliament.
And just to be absolutely clear, unless there is an end date for the backstop or a mechanism that guarantees the UK can get out of it whenever it wants to, you would not be able to support this version of... That's what she's got... That's what... So your view is she has to go back after she loses, but that's the minimum she has to get.
Yeah, well, the withdrawal agreement is fundamentally flawed, and the critical element in it, there's other bits and pieces in it too, but the critical element is that the whole backstop position just destroys any idea that we're in any negotiable position subsequently, and it also leaves Northern Ireland, as you said so rightly in the attorney's opinion, as a third country to us. In other words, that we're outside from them.
But can I press you on a related point, which I also put, obviously, to Nigel Dodds? Quite a lot of your Tory colleagues who have similar concerns about this deal have now lost confidence in the Prime Minister, and they are saying to me that they no longer trust her to deliver an acceptable Brexit. Do you trust her to deliver an acceptable Brexit?
Yeah, I've always been a supporter of the Prime Minister. I gave him my support. I was an ex-leader. I am not going to start putting in letters to...
No, sure, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, would you
I'm going to
trust
answer
her?
the question. My answer is I do want her to go back and recognise that possibly the best thing for the government is, ironically, either to pull the vote or to lose the vote, because they have to make it very clear to the European Union that there are limits to what the UK can possibly accept. And I genuinely believe, and I went... You know, I visited Monsieur Barnier. I was there for over 2 hours with my team, and what we proposed was open borders. It is wholly feasible to do as a protocol that exists for Northern Ireland. It does not then require a locked-in backstop, but an utter commitment, regardless of what happens, that there will never be any checks at the border in Northern Ireland.
But
now, that is wholly feasible.
But actually, on your version, surely to have the maximum impact when it comes to the EU, she has to lose the vote, because if she pulls it, they may just say, well, you haven't had the courage of your convictions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Prime Minister is going to pull it. I think she's on a track to have a vote. So that vote from... I'm a natural and genuine supporter of the Prime Minister. This will be really the first time that I would vote against her since she's been there. And it's because I genuinely believe, whatever else the government ministers say, that the strongest arm that she will have is when she's lost this vote and has to go back and renegotiate, because now they're really talking seriously. And when they say it was never on offer, I've never been to a negotiation where I sit there and say, what are you offering me? All negotiations I do is that this is what I want. And now, let's see if we can find some middle ground.
But again, some would say if you take that view that she's not negotiated well, that it's extraordinary that you think she can learn at this late stage. But my thanks very much to Ian Duncan Smith. Don't go